Welcome to this lecture on animal behavior. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating mysteries in the natural world: why animals sometimes sacrifice their own lives to help others. We will uncover the hidden mathematics behind selflessness by diving deep into Hamilton's rule. By the end of this session, you will understand exactly how genetics drive cooperative behavior. To begin our journey, let us imagine you have just found a delicious, life-saving sandwich after days of wandering in a harsh desert. If a complete stranger walked up and asked for it, you would almost certainly say no, because you desperately need it to survive. However, what if the person asking was your younger sister or your own child? Suddenly, you might feel a strong, undeniable urge to give up your food, even if it means you might perish. This deeply ingrained instinct to help our close family members, even at a severe personal cost, is something we see all across the animal kingdom. Now that we have a relatable human example, let us define how this works in biology. In the study of animal behavior, altruism refers to any action where an animal reduces its own fitness, meaning its ability to survive and reproduce, in order to increase the fitness of another animal. For a long time, this completely puzzled scientists, including Charles Darwin. According to the basic principles of natural selection, any trait that causes an animal to sacrifice itself should theoretically be eliminated from the gene pool over time. Yet altruism persists in nature, demanding a scientific explanation. This evolutionary paradox brings us to the brilliant solution proposed by evolutionary biologist William Donald Hamilton. He solved this mystery by proving that altruism can indeed evolve, provided the animals involved are genetically related. Hamilton introduced the groundbreaking concept of inclusive fitness. This means an animal's evolutionary success is not just about its own direct offspring. It also includes the offspring of its relatives, because they share a significant portion of the same genes. By helping relatives survive and reproduce, an animal is indirectly passing on copies of its own shared genes to the next generation. Understanding this concept of inclusive fitness is absolutely critical because it completely revolutionized how we view complex animal societies. Before Hamilton's rule was established, biologists struggled to explain extreme self-sacrifice. For instance, why would worker bees sting intruders and die to protect their hive? Or why would meerkats stand guard and risk being eaten by eagles just to warn their group? Without this rule, cooperative breeding and insect societies would remain an unsolvable paradox. Hamilton's framework allows us to predict exactly when an animal will act selfishly and when it will be cooperative, based purely on genetics. Now that we understand the theory, let us look at the formal mathematical principle. Hamilton's rule is expressed as a simple, elegant inequality. R times B must be strictly greater than C. Let us break down these symbols. The letter R represents the coefficient of relatedness, which is the fraction of genes the helper and recipient share. The letter B stands for the reproductive benefit to the recipient, usually measured in extra offspring produced because of the help. Finally, C represents the reproductive cost to the actor, meaning the offspring the helper loses. Physically, if the relatedness R increases or the benefit B increases, the altruistic behavior is much more likely to occur. If the personal cost C becomes too high, the animal will choose to be selfish. With the formula in mind, Let us apply it to a concrete scenario involving a species of ground squirrels. Imagine a squirrel, our actor, spots a hungry predator. It has a choice: sound an alarm call to save its sister, or stay quiet and hide. Sounding the alarm draws the predator's attention, giving us a reproductive cost, C, of one lost future offspring. However, the alarm saves the sister, allowing her to produce a benefit, B, of 3 extra offspring. Because they are full siblings, they share 50% of their genes, making the relatedness, R, equal to 0.5. We need to determine if this alarm-calling behavior will evolve. To solve this, we must first calculate the indirect genetic benefit, which is the left side of our equation. We do this by multiplying the relatedness value of 0.5 by the benefit value of 3 offspring. Why do we do this? This crucial step converts the sister's offspring into a genetic currency that the actor can directly compare to its own offspring. The result of this multiplication is 1.5. This means the actor gains an indirect genetic benefit equivalent to producing 1.5 of its own offspring, just by ensuring its sister survives. Now that we have our indirect benefit, we must compare it to the direct cost the actor pays. We place our calculated benefit of 1.5 and our cost of 1 back into the original inequality. We ask, is 1.5 strictly greater than 1? Yes, it is indeed greater. The mathematical condition for Hamilton's rule is fully satisfied. In practical terms, the genetic payoff of saving a sister is higher than the genetic penalty of risking one's own life. Therefore, natural selection will favor this self-sacrificing behavior, and the squirrel acts altruistically because it is a highly profitable genetic decision. Having seen how siblings interact, let us look at a slightly different scenario to see how genetic distance changes animal behavior. Imagine the exact same ground squirrel spots a predator. But this time, the only other squirrel nearby is a first cousin, not a sister. The cost of sounding the alarm remains exactly the same at 1 lost offspring. The benefit also remains the same, as the cousin will produce 3 extra offspring. However, first cousins share far fewer genes. The coefficient of relatedness, R, for first cousins, is only 0.125, meaning they share just 12.5% of their genes. Let us see if the math still supports altruism. Just like before, we begin by calculating the indirect genetic benefit on the left side of the equation. We take the new relatedness value of 0.125 and multiply it by the benefit of 3 offspring. This step evaluates how much genetic representation the actor actually gains by helping a relative who is much further out on the family tree. Because the relatedness has dropped significantly, we expect this indirect benefit to shrink. The calculation yields an indirect benefit of 0.375, which is drastically lower than the benefit we calculated for the sister. With our new indirect benefit calculated, we set up the final comparison against the personal cost, which remains at 1 lost offspring. We can clearly see that 0.375 is strictly less than 1. The required condition for Hamilton's rule fails completely. Physically, this tells us that the genetic cost of losing one's own offspring is much heavier than the tiny genetic benefit gained by saving a distant cousin. As a result, natural selection will not favor alarm calling here, and the squirrel will stay quiet. This perfectly illustrates why animals are highly cooperative with close family, but indifferent to distant relatives. To consolidate everything we have calculated, let us look at this schematic diagram of Hamilton's rule. On the left, we have the actor, and on the right, the recipient. The horizontal arrow between them represents their genetic relatedness, or shared genes. When the actor performs an altruistic act, shown by the arrow pointing right, two things happen. First, the actor incurs a reproductive cost, represented by the red downward arrow, indicating lost offspring. Second, the recipient gains a reproductive benefit, shown by the green upward arrow, indicating extra offspring. The large formula at the bottom reminds us that the act only happens if the green benefit, scaled by the shared genes, outweighs the red cost. As we wrap up our understanding of this topic, let us review the most important ideas. First, self-sacrifice in nature is not an evolutionary mistake. It is a highly calculated genetic strategy. Second, the concept of inclusive fitness explains that animals help relatives to ensure their shared genes survive and multiply. Finally, Hamilton's rule provides the exact mathematical threshold for this behavior. By weighing the reproductive cost against the relatedness and benefit, animals unconsciously perform a biological cost-benefit analysis. You have now mastered the invisible math that guides cooperation in the wild. Excellent work.